They thought they picked the perfect target, a 60-year-old woman walking alone. What they didn't know would change everything. Subscribe now for stories that will keep you thinking long after they end. Deborah adjusted the strap of her handbag as she stepped out of her friend's house. The night air in Lansing, Michigan was cool, still. She didn't mind it though. Deborah had always liked walking. At 60, her stride was deliberate, steady, with that dignified air of someone who'd spent a lifetime holding her head high. The streetlights flickered above her as she turned onto Grove Avenue. It was quiet this time of evening. Too quiet. She noticed the lack of sound as her heels clicked softly against the pavement. In this part of town, the silence wasn't peaceful. It felt like people had locked their doors a little earlier, shut their blinds a little tighter. Deborah didn't care. She'd walked this route plenty of times, but tonight, she wasn't alone. Near the corner, just past the row of chain-link fences, Deborah noticed them. 3 figures, young men, leaning against a battered SUV parked on the curb. Their laughter was low and scattered, but it stopped when they saw her. Deborah's eyes stayed forward, calm. Her mother had always taught her, people can sense your fear. If you don't give it to them, they have no power. She wasn't scared. Not yet. As she passed, the first voice cut through the quiet. "Hey, what's an old woman like you doing out here this late?" The words weren't kind, and neither were the snickers that followed. Deborah didn't flinch. She kept walking, focused on the path ahead, but the voices didn't stop. "Look at her," another one added. "Think she's better than us, huh?" They were close now, too close. Deborah slowed her pace just slightly, her fingers gripping the strap of her bag a little tighter. The street, once empty and still, had suddenly gotten much smaller, and the night was only beginning. Deborah's calm demeanor masked what she already understood. This was no harmless banter. The gang wasn't going to let her simply pass. She could feel it. That sense of being watched too closely, like a predator circling prey. Behind her, the footsteps began. 1 pair, then 2. Shoes scraping on concrete. "Where are you going so fast?" one of them called out, his voice sharp like he was testing her. Deborah stopped. Slowly, she turned her head to look at them. 3 young men, late teens or early 20s, standing just a few feet away. Their postures casual, but their eyes weren't friendly. One wore a baggy hoodie pulled over his head, hands jammed in his pockets. The second, tall, wiry, with a shaved head, stood smirking with arms crossed. The third, the one doing all the talking, twirled a metal baseball bat in his hand like it was a toy. Deborah didn't say anything. She just looked at them, steadily. The leader of the trio stepped closer, his sneakers scraping against the pavement. "What, you deaf? I asked you a question." "Young man," Deborah finally said, her voice even and unshaken. "I'm going home. That's all. Now get out of my way." The boys exchanged glances and chuckled. "Get out of her way," the tall one mocked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You hear that, Ty? She's telling you what to do." The one with the bat, Ty, grinned, revealing crooked teeth. "You don't get it, do you?" he sneered, closing the space between them. "This isn't your neighborhood. People like you don't belong here, you got that?" The words were bitter, spit out like venom. Deborah remained still, her face expressionless, but inside, her heart clenched. This wasn't the first time she'd heard words like these. It wouldn't be the last. "I've lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years, Deborah said quietly. "I belong exactly where I am." Ty's grin faltered. He hadn't expected that. People usually cowered, mumbled apologies and hurried away. Deborah did none of that. But the other 2 weren't done. 30 years? That's too long, lady," the one in the hoodie jeered. "Time for you to pack up and go back to—" "Enough!" The word shot out of Deborah's mouth with a sharpness that startled them. For a moment, the street fell silent. Even Ty seemed caught off guard. his grip on the bat tightening. Deborah stared them down, her voice unwavering. "You think you're scaring me? Boys like you have been trying to intimidate people like me my entire life. You're nothing new." The insult stung. Ty's face darkened, and the smirk was gone. "You're a tough old woman, huh?" he growled. "We'll see just how tough you are." Deborah didn't move as he raised the bat, holding it just high enough to threaten without swinging. "Ty, man," the tall one muttered, shifting nervously. "Come on, we don't gotta—" "No," Ty barked. "She doesn't get to talk to us like that." The other two hesitated, glancing at each other, but they didn't stop him. The tension in the air was thick now, pressing against Deborah like a weight. She knew this could turn dangerous fast, but she wasn't afraid. Not yet. And someone else was watching. Someone who had already made a call. Deborah didn't flinch. She stood tall, shoulders squared, eyes locked on Ty as if daring him to swing that bat. Her expression didn't hold anger, fear, or desperation. It held something else. Something Ty wasn't used to seeing, a quiet strength that refused to break. "Do it," Deborah said softly. Ty's brow furrowed. "What?" "You heard me," she continued, her voice calm and clear. "You're standing there with your little bat, acting tough. So do it. Swing. Show me who you really are." The other two boys shifted nervously, their confidence cracking. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Usually their victims begged, cried, or ran, but Deborah wasn't giving them that satisfaction. Her lack of fear unnerved them more than her words. "Lady, shut your mouth," Ty barked, his voice breaking just slightly. He lifted the bat higher, his knuckles white against the metal. Deborah took a step forward, just one step, but it was enough. Ty froze. "You don't know anything about me," she said, her gaze piercing through him. "You look at me and see someone weak, someone you think you can push around because you've convinced yourself you've got power." She paused. "But let me tell you something, son. Real power doesn't come from a bat or a gang. It comes from being a man who's better than this nonsense." Ty's jaw clenched. For the first time, he looked unsure of himself. The words hit like stones, direct and hard. "Shut up," he snapped, though his voice wavered. "Or what?" Deborah challenged, taking another step closer. "You gonna hit a 60-year-old woman in the middle of a street? That make you feel like a man?" The streetlight above them buzzed faintly, casting long shadows on the pavement. The two other boys now stood back, watching Ty like they weren't so sure he was in charge anymore. "Let's go, man," the one in the hoodie muttered under his breath. "She ain't worth it." "She's testing you, Ty," the taller one added cautiously. "This is stupid." But Ty didn't back down. His pride wouldn't let him. Instead, he spat on the ground near Deborah's shoes. "People like you always think you can walk around here like you own the place," he hissed. Deborah tilted her head. "You keep saying, 'people like me.' You don't even know who I am, boy. Not a clue." That was when it happened. A faint sound in the distance. Sirens. It wasn't loud yet, just a faint cry growing steadily closer, but everyone heard it. Ty looked up, startled, his grip on the bat loosening slightly. The other two straightened, their nervous glances darting down the street. "Who called them?" the boy in the hoodie whispered. "Who's watching?" Deborah smiled faintly. "Someone who knows the difference between right and wrong." Ty's face was red now, flustered and angry. The control he thought he had over the situation was slipping, and he knew it. You think you're so smart," he stammered, but the confidence was gone. The bat lowered to his side. Deborah took another step toward him, this time closing the gap between them completely. Her voice dropped, low and firm. "Let me tell you something, Ty, because I do know your name. You're better than this. You and your little friends here think you're strong, think you're men. But you're just scared boys playing a dangerous game you don't even understand. Ty blinked, the words landing harder than any blow ever could. And let me tell you something else, Deborah added. You're lucky tonight. Lucky that you didn't swing that bat. Because if you had, you wouldn't have just been answering to me. You'd be answering to every person in this community who knows my name. Man, she's bluffing, the taller boy muttered, though he didn't sound convinced. The sirens grew louder, flashing lights now flickering faintly against the houses in the distance. Ty's grip slackened completely. He glanced at his friends, panic creeping into his expression. "Let's get out of here," he growled. But Deborah didn't step aside. "You'll be back," she said simply, "because that's what boys like you do. But next time, you might want to think about whose path you're crossing." The gang hesitated for just a moment longer, like they weren't sure if they should stand their ground or run. Then Ty turned sharply, shoving the bat under his arm. "Come on," he barked. The three of them scattered down the street, their voices fading into the distance as the sirens finally reached the edge of the block. Deborah stood still, watching them go. Her heartbeat, which had been steady throughout the encounter, quickened slightly now that the immediate danger had passed. She allowed herself a small breath. The police car rolled up slowly, headlights bright. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Deborah turned, the calm still settled in her features. "I'm fine. Just some boys who need to learn a lesson." But for the gang, the lesson was only beginning. And for Deborah, the night wasn't quite over. The police car idled at the curb, its headlights slicing through the night. Two officers stepped out, their expressions wary as they approached Deborah. One was middle-aged, his uniform crisp and demeanor professional, while the other, a younger recruit, trailed slightly behind. "Ma'am, we got a call about a disturbance. A neighbor said they saw some guys harassing you," the older officer said. His tone was polite, but Deborah could see the way his eyes scanned her, making sure she was unhurt. "I'm fine," Deborah replied, standing tall. "It wasn't much of a disturbance, just some misguided boys trying to prove themselves." The younger officer glanced down the street, where the gang had disappeared. "Any chance you can describe them?" Deborah's lips curled faintly into a small smile. "3 boys, late teens. One of them carried a bat, thought it made him powerful." She paused, locking eyes with the younger officer. "You'll find them soon enough. They aren't smart enough to go far." The older officer nodded, scribbling notes onto his notepad. "We'll have a patrol comb the area. You sure you're okay, ma'am? Do you need someone to escort you home?" Deborah waved her hand dismissively. "No, thank you. I've been walking this street for decades. I'll finish my walk just fine." The older officer hesitated but nodded respectfully. "All right. If you think of anything else, call us." With that, the officers returned to their car and rolled away, headlights shrinking as they disappeared down the road. The street was quiet again, but it wasn't the same. Deborah turned her gaze toward the house across the road, one window still cracked open. A silhouette moved behind the curtain. The witness, she thought, silently grateful. Whoever it was had been paying attention when it mattered. The gang had fled in a hurry, but panic didn't erase stupidity. It didn't take long for the police to find them. Ty, the ringleader, sat slouched on the curb, handcuffed and scowling as officers questioned him under the glow of flashing red and blue lights. His friends, silent now, stood a few feet away, equally cuffed and subdued. "What do you mean you didn't touch her?" one officer asked, his voice firm. "We had a call saying you threatened her." Ty spit on the pavement, a hollow gesture of defiance. "She was talking like she owned the whole block," he muttered. "We weren't gonna do nothing. Just messing with her, that's all." "Threatening someone with a bat isn't just messing," the officer shot back, his patience thinning. "And for what? Because she walked down the street? Ty didn't answer. His gaze burned holes into the pavement. He was angry. Angry that the night hadn't gone the way he thought it would. Angry that Deborah's words still rang in his ears. "You don't even know who she is, do you?" the officer pressed. Ty looked up sharply, confused. "What are you talking about?" The officer smirked faintly, shaking his head. "That woman's name is Deborah Owens. Does that ring any bells for you?" Ty's face remained blank. The officer leaned in slightly. "Her son, Michael Owens. He's the man running half the outreach programs in this district. Youth rehabilitation, education support, food drives. You name it, he's behind it. Your buddy in the hoodie there? If his little brother ever needed school supplies, odds are Deborah's son helped him out." Ty blinked, suddenly speechless. The tall one, who hadn't spoken much earlier, shifted uneasily. "Wait, she's that lady?" "That's right," the officer replied. "And you just tried to intimidate a woman who's done more for this neighborhood than you'll ever do." Ty's scowl faltered, the weight of the words landing on him like bricks. He had no idea. None of them did. Meanwhile, Deborah was almost home. Her pace remained steady, but her mind wandered. She wasn't surprised by the boy's ignorance. Prejudice had always blinded people to the truth, to who others really were. As she approached her front porch, her neighbor, Mrs. Langston, a white woman in her 70s, peeked through her doorway, concern etched on her face. "Deborah, are you all right?" Deborah offered her a small smile. "I'm fine, Helen. Just some kids acting foolish." "I called the police," Mrs. Langston admitted nervously. "I didn't know what else to do." Deborah nodded. "Thank you. You did the right thing." Mrs. Langston looked down, shame flickering across her features. "It's awful, Deborah. They don't know you. Don't know what you've done for all of us." Deborah's smile softened. "That's the problem, Helen. People see what they want to see. But you can't fix ignorance with anger. You fix it by showing people who you really are." Mrs. Langston stared at her for a moment, then nodded faintly. "You're a better woman than most, Deborah. Better than me." Deborah turned back toward her door. "Not better, Helen. Just different." She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. But outside, the truth was already starting to spread, and the gang had no idea how much they were about to learn. Ty sat in the back of the police car, his face turned toward the window, eyes fixed on the streetlights flashing past. His anger had fizzled out, replaced by something heavier. Shame. He hadn't known. He should have known. The officer driving the car hadn't said much, but his words earlier still echoed in Ty's head. "You tried to intimidate someone who's done more for this neighborhood than you'll ever do." The other two boys were in a separate car, being taken down to the station. For now, Ty was alone with his thoughts, and they were relentless. He replayed the scene in his mind. Deborah's steady gaze, her fearless voice, the way she stepped toward him instead of backing down. She hadn't flinched. Not once. He couldn't understand it. Why someone like her wouldn't be afraid. And then the name. Deborah Owens. Michael Owens' mother. Michael Owens was a name everyone in Lansing knew. He'd spoken at events Ty's own mother had dragged him to as a kid. Events for families struggling to get by. He'd seen Michael shaking hands with pastors, organizing donations for the school, helping rebuild a playground after a fire. Ty hadn't cared back then. It was just a name. Just another person trying to fix a world that Ty thought was unfixable. But now, it felt different. Personal. At the station, the officers didn't throw them into cells. Instead, the three boys were seated in a small, stuffy room lined with chairs. Ty sat slumped in his, while the tall one and the kid in the hoodie sat quietly beside him, their earlier cockiness gone. After a while, the door opened, and a figure stepped inside. It wasn't a cop. It was Michael Owens. The three boys sat up straighter without meaning to. Michael was tall and broad-shouldered, with a calm presence that filled the room the second he entered. He didn't look angry. He didn't shout. He just stood there for a moment, looking at each of them like he could see straight through them. Finally, Michael spoke. "You boys don't know me," he said, his voice low and steady. "But I know you." Ty frowned. "What are you talking about?" Michael crossed his arms. "I know where you come from. I grew up 2 blocks from here. I know what it's like to feel angry at the world. To feel like no one sees you, like no one cares. I get it." The room was silent. "But you know what I don't get?" Michael continued. "I don't get why you'd go after someone like my mother. A woman who's spent her entire life helping people like you." Ty flinched at that. Michael's words felt heavier because they weren't shouted. They were spoken like truths Ty couldn't argue with. "She fought for this community when no one else would," Michael said. "You think those backpacks the kids at Jefferson Elementary get every fall come out of thin air? You think the food drives, the free clinics, the after-school programs just happen? That's her. That's my mom." Ty's chest tightened. He didn't have anything to say. Michael stepped closer, his gaze sharp. "And what did you do? You threatened her. You tried to scare her. You thought you were strong because you had a bat in your hand, but you looked weak, all of you." The kid in the hoodie muttered, "We didn't know." "That's the problem," Michael cut him off. "You didn't know. You didn't bother to know. You looked at her and saw what you wanted to see, but you were wrong." The silence stretched on. Ty's hands clenched into fists on his knees. He couldn't meet Michael's eyes. "Here's what's going to happen," Michael said finally. "You're not walking away from this without consequences. The officers will handle that part. But when you leave this room, if you leave this room, you're going to think long and hard about who you want to be. Because this," he gestured toward them, "this isn't strength, this isn't power, it's ignorance." Michael turned and headed for the door. Before leaving, he paused, glancing back at Ty. "And one last thing," he said. "You owe my mother an apology." With that, he walked out, leaving the three boys sitting in silence. Later that night, Ty lay on the thin mattress of a holding cell, staring at the ceiling. His mind buzzed with Michael's words, Deborah's voice, and the sound of his own foolish laughter echoing back at him. For the first time in a long time, he felt small. Not because someone had made him feel that way, but because he realized how much smaller he had made himself. And outside those walls, Deborah's story was already spreading. Her strength was speaking louder than their hatred ever could. The morning sun poured through Deborah's living room window, casting light on the framed photographs that adorned her shelves. Pictures of her son Michael as a boy, his graduation cap tilted slightly crooked. Snapshots of community events, kids smiling as they held new backpacks, families sharing meals at food drives. Memories of decades spent fighting to make her neighborhood better, one act of kindness at a time. Deborah sat in her armchair, a steaming cup of tea resting in her hands. She was tired, but not defeated. Last night had been hard, but it wasn't new. People like Ty and his friends had always existed, boys who thought anger made them powerful. But she knew better. A knock on her door startled her. When she opened it, her neighbor, Mrs. Langston, stood nervously on the porch. "Good morning, Deborah. I wanted to say something." Deborah smiled faintly. "Go ahead, Helen." Mrs. Langston shifted her weight. "I told a few people what happened last night. I hope that's okay. People need to hear about what you did, how you stood up to them." Deborah shook her head softly. "It's not about me, Helen. It's about what we teach those boys now, what they learn from this moment." The older woman nodded, eyes softening. "You're right. But still, you're a stronger woman than most." Deborah met her gaze. "Strength isn't about winning battles, Helen. It's about standing firm for what's right, no matter who tries to knock you down. She watched Mrs. Langston walk back to her house, the neighborhood now alive with the hum of morning routines. Deborah stepped onto her porch and looked down the street, her eyes steady. Somewhere, she knew those boys were thinking about last night. And maybe, just maybe, they would change. Stories like Deborah's remind us of the power of resilience, quiet dignity, and standing up to ignorance. If this story moved you, share it. Let's start more conversations about respect, understanding, and choosing a better path. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter.